Welcome back to another Tag Tips video. My name is Megan and I work on the marketing team at PC NAMETAG. And today I'm here with Zoe Moore of Grow with Zomo, and she's going to give us some great actionable tips for meeting and exceeding your DE&I goals as an event planner this year and beyond. Zoe, thanks so much for joining me. I'm excited to have you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Always love talking to you and doing these collaborative projects. So here's some more.
Zoe and I have been able to work on some awesome DE&I content earlier this year, so we knew we had to create a video together. So we're excited to have you all tune in. And Zoe is just a wealth of knowledge in the events industry, and I'm so excited to hear all the great things that she's going to share with us today. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and get started. So I want to learn a little bit more about how you became a diversity strategist, because this seems like such an amazing job to me. It would be so cool to be able to help people learn and grow and create this positive change in the events industry or any industry, really. So I'd love to learn a little bit more about your background.
Yeah, absolutely. Becoming this strategic EDI consultant, EDI standing for equity, diversity, and inclusion, really has been an iterative process. I was in the Army for 12 years. When I got out, I no longer wanted to work within information technology. And so I was pursuing like a field that kind of reminded me of the camaraderie that I experienced when I was in the military. And so when I was in school for hospitality, recreation, and tourism, I went to an annual conference and expo hosted by Meeting Professionals International Northern California chapter. And not only did I just notice camaraderie, all these different sectors, all these different roles within the industry that were being, presented at this conference. But I just learned very quickly the reach that the hospitality, events, and tourism industry had. And so the experience at the annual conference and expo really sealed the deal that there was this industry in which I didn't have to just be one singular thing. I didn't, have to always be an event planner. I could be numerous of different things, but also just within that space, I noticed that there was a lack of representation. First, just in, when it comes to social identities. And there's a lot of people that I was working with in Oakland, California, that weren't aware of MPI as an association and the benefits that they could have for education. So I was like, well, we need to bring in more planners who are, living, working in Oakland, and also just more grassroots, smaller businesses that execute events. And so in building that bridge, I started having the conversation around equity, diversity, and inclusion. And what does it look like? What does it look like to eliminate barriers? What does it look like to be more innovative in your execution? And over that kind of evolution and iteration of building my business, I combined my desire to be an entrepreneur with my passion of bringing people together and creating inclusive spaces. And just really realizing that events, as I go on to always talk about, serve as a microcosm of society. So everything that we do within an event can be replicated in society. So we can be the blueprint for how to bring people together. If we show that there's a way to, through our duty of care and through our practices, to create inclusivity and equity. And so that is a combination of just being an Army veteran, searching for who I was going to be in my civilian sector, and realizing that I could use events as a medium to have these discussions and make these discussions less uncomfortable and very proactive. And that we could, again, serve as the thought leaders in this space.
There's such a great need for equity, diversity, and inclusion consulting, especially in the events industry. So I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit more about how you and your company Grow with Zomo help event planners and others reach their DE&I goals throughout the year.
First, I think I want people to realize, like, there's always this question, is DEI, we do it because it's the right thing to do. And I think that is, really touching upon the moral compass, the morality of it all. Within the business perspective, my goal is to not only, redirect the moral compass, but really focus on it as a practice procedure, as a organizational, how to operationalize, whether it's DEI or EDI, it's interchangeable. but how to operationalize it, how to make sure that in everything that you do in your business, from how you hire, who's represented in leadership, how you procure, how you market your business, how you help clients, the clients that you work with, your value alignment. So as a business, I'm helping people think about DEI more strategically, that it's not something that you do as an afterthought or ancillary, but that you look at your business practices and you say, when you're making those decisions, who is at the table, who's not at the table, whose voice hasn't been heard, whose voice needs to be heard, and asking yourself some questions. So the services that I provide range from consulting to speaking engagements, workshops. And one of my core values as a business owner is flexibility. So when I have a discovery call with a client who's saying, hey, we don't know exactly where we are in our journey or where we want to go. We don't know if we need training, if we need strategy, but we just want to talk to you and figure out, what that looks like. I'm like, let's talk. Here's a bundle, purchase my, consulting hours, and let's figure out together what you need. And that kind of speaks to the name of my business. It's Grow with Zomo, because I'm on this journey with you, and it's all about understanding that we're growing and that it is a journey and it's a process.
I think Grow with Zomo is a great resource for any event professional. It doesn't matter your level of experience. There's something new to learn at all stages. So definitely recommend checking out Zoe and Grow with Zomo. So it's a really great segue into my next question. So something that I've been learning a lot about this year is that, diversity has always been very important to event planners, but I think, as you mentioned, event planners are starting to be a lot more strategic with making sure that attendees feel safe, they feel welcome, they feel included at the events that they attend. So my next question for you is, why do you believe that event professionals should make DE&I a top priority?
I always say that we are in the business of people. And so as long as you are in the business of people, you have to ensure that, one, you understand who your people are across all social identities. There is no one singular identity that is the standard. There is no one singular phenotype which deserves to be prioritized. And what an event does is expose people to places, things, people's ideologies, and it's a great opportunity to just expand your understanding. So as long as we're in the business of people, we need to prioritize DEI, because what DEI allows us to do is, in a sense, take a microscope and look through our practices, our processes, our procedures, and make sure that we're being as inclusive as possible. And another phrase that a colleague of mine used to always use, that when we plan for the most marginalized of us, it benefits all of us. And so DEI, again, is that tool that allows you to do that, to think about what does the most marginalized, the most underrepresented person need in this space. And then we'll find that by implementing that into our planning process, there are more than one group that benefits from that particular, addition of planning or activation or thought process that you embed into, your practices. So yes, we're in the business of people, and those people who pay their money to attend an event, to come to a destination, deserve an experience that is memorable in the most positive of ways.
One thing I like that you said was it really starts with those processes and those procedures. So I think as event professionals, we know that we need to embrace diversity. It's very important, top priority. But I think for some, it can be difficult to kind of know where to start, especially if you're new or just starting to get into implementing those new strategies in your event strategy as a whole. So I know DE&I can be a tough subject to talk about for some people as well. That's one thing that I learned from you. So would you be able to tell me, are there any big like diversity related challenges or barriers that you have experienced in the events industry that event planners have to approach?
Yeah, I think that one of the first questions that comes up is, I heard a quote the other day, where people resist, things persist. And I was like, whoa, that's pretty thoughtful, in the sense that people are resistant to this conversation because we've been in a sense, socialized to look at these topics as taboo. It's like, oops, don't talk about the socioeconomic status, don't talk about racism, don't talk about sexism. And DI brings up all those conversations because that is the reality with the society that we live in. And so for so long, what we've been doing in this resistance is avoiding conflict. And, when you avoid conflict, that is conflict. And these things, these issues have been swept under the rug, just piling up. And what we found in 2020 is that we as a society tripped over them, and because they hadn't been addressed. And so now it's like, okay, we have to address these topics. And so the biggest challenge that I find is people spending time to talk about these different challenges and barriers and the social realities so that they can develop a proactive plan. But as long as they resist the conversation, these things will persist. And so that being the first challenge. And then when budget comes up, people use budget as what I say is an excuse. Because again, if you're not thinking about how you can be innovative and creative with your budget and how you can reallocate funds to make sure there's digital accessibility, that there's an interpreter, that there's marketing that is inclusive, that there's rooms and activations that cater to some of the most marginalized identities, or just individuals who observe holidays and practices that haven't been, historically or presently considered the norm. How can we be more inclusive of them? People have looked at their budget as an excuse not to implement or include those things. And so it's first, it begins with a conversation, to start talking about these topics so that we can eliminate those barriers. And then second, looking at this ideology of, well, we've always done business this way. And as in addition to calling myself a strategic EDI consultant, I'm a strategic disruptor. And that is to disrupt that not only the status quo, but that thought process that we've done business this way for this long of time. And that's my whole, pushback, is that has been the problem, is that the way that we have done business has been excluding and marginalizing people, and it's time for a change. So that's how we get through those barriers.
I think as event planners, there's this misconception that we're not going to do it right, or we're not going to do enough. So I think it's really important for us to really think about, doing something is more than nothing. And it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to implement new things, see what works, see what doesn't, and just go from there. And that's where you step in. You can help people, guide down the path and learn as they grow.
And that's another thing you said, it as they grow, right? Grow with Zomo. It's about growth. It's about nurturing those ideas, meaning you're going to have to determine how much sun it needs, how much water, and if we liken it to that, we understand in that process, we're going to recognize that, oh, that didn't work. And here's an opportunity to try something new that leads to more growth and more learning. So be okay with that process.
That's a great way to move into my next question. So as you know, event planners are very busy people, and they're always looking for those, new tips, tricks, strategies to implement throughout the year. So I was wondering if you could share with us just a few tips that you have for event planners, and what are some of those easy ways that they can start creating more inclusive event environments?
Ooh, okay. You want me to be short and brief. I think strategically looking at supplier diversity as a way to center this conversation, because I think when you're looking at, who your partnership network, who's in your partnership network, who's on your preferred vendor list, what businesses are you collaborating with? When you begin collecting data around those businesses, that type of practice gets you to start realizing that you may not know the companies that you work with, their values, how they operate, who's running that business. And that gets you in the thinking of also collecting data around the people that you serve. And so what we see a disparity in is businesses who understand different ethnic groups, different religions, different, social identities. And by understanding who we're working with and who we serve, supplier diversity allows us then to have a diverse supplier list and preferred vendors list, and then opens us up to clients now that we may not have, worked with because we didn't know their customs or their traditions. And so it just opens up new markets, new opportunities. It expands who you collaborate with. Like if you are not, well versed in accessibility, working with a particular consultant who is a subject matter expert in that area is somebody that you're adding to your toolkit. So I would say looking at a supplier diversity program is really helpful. As far as a quick and easy way, it is a process like everything, but if you start looking at that list, you'll begin to assess yourself, because all of this starts with an assessment. And then just walking through your event space and trying to, with your team, people who are different social identities, different generations, different backgrounds, different regions, different language, walk through that event space and get people to, in a sense, poke holes through your ideas and think about what if, these individuals come? What if somebody from this background, this age group comes? What would be their experience? Because it's about this statement that NPI uses: we need to stop planning events and start designing experiences. So what is that experience for that particular stakeholder or participant or attendee when they walk through this space, the content that they hear, who they interact with, and make sure that we're looking through their lens and not just our lens.
My favorite tip that you just said is to, really explore the what if. I think it always, comes down to information sharing, starting those conversations, learning from your peers and going from there. So I love those great strategies that you just shared with us. So thank you so much for joining us today, Zoe. I really appreciate everything that you shared with us. And I wanted to share that there are so many different ways that you can continue to learn more about diversity and inclusion in the events industry. The first thing that you can do is you can connect with Zoe on LinkedIn. She would love to speak with you and learn more about you as an event professional. You can also follow Grow with Zomo on social media. I put up the social channels that Zoe is on, so definitely connect with her, like, comment, share her content. Another great thing that Zoe offers are free consultations on her website. You can go to growwithzomo.com and schedule your free consultation. Definitely recommend taking advantage of that resource. And lastly, you can subscribe to the Tag Talk blog. That's PC NAMETAG's educational blog just for event planners. And I cover so many different tips, strategies. I offer a lot of free downloadable resources that you can check out. So definitely recommend heading over to the Tag Talk blog and checking that out. So thank you so much for joining me. I loved having you be here with me and learning from you. And I think there's a lot that we can talk about as event professionals. And it's just about starting the conversation and learning more and, working with your peers and see what works, see what doesn't, and go from there.
Absolutely. And then they can also check out the Event DEI Strategist course that's offered by PCMA Event Leadership Institute. And that provides a framework to have this conversation and to produce outcomes that are measurable and sustainable.
That's a great point. Zoe oversees that course, and I would definitely recommend checking that out as well. It's a really great resource that you can use to help expand your mindset and learn more about diversity and inclusion. So thank you so much, Zoe. I appreciate having you. And until next time, a good rest of your day.
All right. You too. Take care.
Yeah.